lecture is a continuation to the previous video, which is how do we use or how do we do state management in ASP.NET. In this lecture, we will use cookies, and then we will use the query string. What are cookies? Cookies basically like a text file, if you will, that you can store on the client, and then you can store value or values in it. All right. You can also do it in terms of you can set the date, expiration date, and so it'll expire. The advantages of cookies is that they're small, then you can put them on the client. The disadvantages are that sometimes that some of the browsers are don't allow you to store cookies on your client. Okay, so you have to take care of that. All right, so let's go ahead and start. We have a page that we have a username and a password. Last time we used the state view to do that, but today we'll use the cookies to do that. So when I double click on this, on the login, if they enter a valid username and a password, we will store the information in a cookie, and that cookie resides on the client, on your computer. Okay. When we come back and visit this page, we'll check, do I have username and a password on this page, stored on my client? If I do, then I don't need to, I can populate this and maybe direct into another page. All right? So let's go ahead and start. So double click on this. The first thing we need to do, that we need to check if username, for example, txt text, and I'm doing a text box 1, text box 2, that text, is it equal to any, say, if the user is Omar, for example, and then, and the password, txt, text box 2, which is the password, dot text, is it equal 1, 2, 3. Okay. If that is the case, that means it's a valid user and ID. This is, of course, dummy, of course, right? But you get the idea. All right. So we do this. Else, what do? We say else. We put that message in the label. That label says lbl message.text equal to valid user and password. Okay. All right. That if it is not a valid user and password. Okay. That's okay. Else, if it is valid, for now, we'll just put a message in here, Control Copy, Control V, and then we'll say, welcome to my website, right? Or user is valid, okay? All right, but that's not really the topic of the lecture, but this is just to get you started, okay? Let me pause this so it'll give you a chance to do this, all right? All right, so if it was a valid user and password, what we wanted to do, we want to be able to save the information about this user on the client. So the next time they visit the page, it's already stored. They don't have to enter it again. And the way we do it, first we create something called a cookie. So you type in HTTP cookie C equal new HTTP cookie, and then you give it a name. That name is important because this is the name that you reference back. All right? So if you want to read back from this cookie, you will use the same name. So if I say my user, for example, or user info, you want to select something that is unique because other people can be creating the same cookie. So make something that is unique to you. All right? HTTP cookie. So after you do this, after you create the cookie, you can set the values. So you can say c.value. You have two options. One is value. You set one value, or you have multiple value, you use values, a dictionary or an array. So, and then you can say values, and then you give it a name, the field that you want to store, just like the state of view. So we can say here, I want to put, for example, username, user ID, as my first value, and then I'm gonna store in it txt text box 1 dot text. Okay? And then you do the same thing for the other field, the second field. Control V, and instead of user ID, you can say user password. And then here, text box 2. Okay? In addition to this, what you can do, you can now set the expiration date of this cookie. So you can say C dot expire date, expires when? It expires equal to what? You say it's going to expire date, time, dot now, from now, dot add to it. You can add minutes, you can add hours, you can add days if you want. So you'll say add days, and it'll expire tomorrow. Okay? If you don't want to, you can set it up to any date you want. Okay? If you put a negative date instead of positive date, what will happen to that cookie? It will expire and get deleted. Okay, so this is a way to delete that cookie. All right? After you set it up, you have to write it. You write it using the object called response. Now remember when we were talking about when you send a request to the server, it comes to you as a request. When you want to answer back, you use the response object. So we'll use the response object, and what do you do with the response? We say response.cookie dot what? Add. What do you add? You add C, the one that I just created, the cookie that I just created. So when does this take place? Only if you enter Omar and 123. All right? So that is for saving it. What about if we want to see when I first visit this page, do I have a cookie on my server, on my client or not? Where do we do this? We have something called the page load, right? What do we do with the page load? We need to check, I have a cookie with the name that I created, which is called user info. If I do, then I can take information from it. What information can I take from it? The user ID and then user password. All right? So if we do it this way, first of all, you need to check, do I have a cookie or not? And that cookie comes to you on the request. So the response, you send it back to the client, would write it. Anytime you get a request, you get a list of all the cookies on that computer. And you would search for the cookie that you're looking for. So you can say here, if request dot cookie, and then you need to give it the name. What name did we use here down below? We use user info. So if I search for user info, that should give me the cookie if it exists. If it is not equal to null, that means it exists. All right? And if it exists, what do we do with it? What do we do with that? We can get the information from it. What information do I get from it? I can get the information that the username and the password. Okay? So I can say, what's going on here? Oh, we're missing a bracket here, a quotation. So what can you say here? You can say txt box1 dot text equal to, just to show you. Now you can store it in variables. You don't have to do it this way. Dot what? Dot request. Oh, first we need to get the cookie. We have to get the cookie from where? From the response. Okay, so I say HTTP request or HTTP cookies C equal request dot, you see this line here? This will give you the cookie, all right? Control copy, Control V. This will give me back the cookie, all right? After I get my cookie, I'll say C txt box1 dot text equals C dot values, because it's stored in values, and then I'll give it the name, which is what? If you remember, what was the names of this value? User ID and user pass. So user ID, and then same thing with the second field, Control copy, and then Control V, and then user pass. Instead of that, we can put user pass, and then here txt box 2. Okay. All right. Let me give you a minute to complete this. All right. One more thing that we need to do. We need to take this and convert it to string. Okay. So we say to string. Okay. That would convert it back to a string. Same thing here. To string. That would convert it back to a string. All right. Let's test it and see what happens. If we run it, well, I'm going to do different scenarios. First, I'm going to enter invalid username and password. Then the second time, we will enter, and then we might as well do this here. Welcome to my website, so you can see it. Control copy, and then Control V here. Okay. Okay. The second time, we will do it with a valid username and password, and then we close the page, we visit it again, and it should get the information back from the cookies. So if I run it, now if I do log in, nothing happened. Invalid user name and password. Now if I type in Omar, I think Omar was capital letter, Omar, and then I put 123, and I do log in, welcome to my website, right? Now watch, if I close this, and close this app from here, the application. Now if I run it, what would you think happens here? What's going to happen here? It will go to here, to the page load. There's something missing here. I'll fix it in a minute. But I'm going to put it in debug so you'll see what's happening here. Okay. So if I run it, first thing that's going to happen is going to come to the page load. Now if I do step over, I got my cookie because it's stored on the client now. It gets it, sets those fields, and it sets that label. And if I run it, you'll see that I got my information back. That was different from the state view. The view state, do you remember? The view state, once you close the page, everything is gone. Here, the cookie stays on your client until it expires. All right? Is that clear? Yeah? All right, let me put it on pause. And before I do this, one more thing I need to fix here. There's something called here, if you go back to this, there's something called here in the page load. When do you want to do this? You don't want to do this all the time. You want to do it when you first visit the page. So how do I know that I am coming to this page for the first time? You will put an if statement. And this if statement says, if not is post back. What does that mean? If not is post back. That means that this is the first time I'm visiting this page and I did not click on, I'm not on the same page and I clicked on the submit button, for example. Or I'm not doing a refresh from the same page. So the first time I visit this page, I want to check, do I have a cookie or not? If I have a cookie, I populate the field. You got it? This is the if is post back. All right, let me pause it and then let you finish the rest of this. All right, and the last thing I want to show you here regarding cookies is how do you find your cookies, for example, in your browser, in your client. Now we're using Chrome, so what you do, you click on settings, and then you click on advanced setting. It is already, if you don't have it, you say show advanced settings, and then you go to content setting, and here you have cookies. Do you see that? Cookies and advanced settings. One of them here how you block cookies if you don't want them to allow you don't want to allow them to store cookies. One of them is that all cookies and content. So you can click on this. Now the cookies that we created here, it tells you the sites that have been creating cookies on your client. The one that is created these cookies is called localhost right now, localhost, right? So I have, for localhost, I have 2 cookies. When I click on it, you'll see that user info, the one we just created. Yeah? And this is the expiration date. Remember where it says expires? It expires on February 3rd, tomorrow. Okay? Is that clear? I'll repeat it again. So you go to Google Chrome, you go to settings, and then if this was not showing, you'd have advanced settings. From advanced settings, you go to privacy, content settings, all cookies, and then here you can search for the cookies that was created under the local host. Here's my local host. Click on it. These are the 2 cookies I've created under this. One of them called the user info, and then it'll give you the details and the content of that user info. Now notice, this is what? In the open. So I know this is the username and the password and the expiration date. So anybody can open this, will be able to access the cookie, right? And this is not, the password. So this is not a good idea, right? So security is an issue, all right? So maybe you don't store passwords, you store something else, all right? Or maybe you encrypt the password before you write it as a cookie. Okay, done. All right, the last part that we're going to cover regarding the state view, which is the query string. So what I want you to do, go to the website and create another page, web form. And call that main page.aspx. So right click, add new web form, and call it main page and hit OK. Main page and hit OK. Yeah, main page and hit OK. Web form. And on this page, all I have is just a label. Just a label, label 1 or whatever. Okay. All right. All right. So now let's go back to the login page and double click on that login button. Now here, what we want to do, if it was a valid login, we want to redirect them to that main page. So how do I redirect them to the main page? We do response dot redirect to where? The page that we've created. I'm going to create a URL string here, and I'll do it here. So string URL equal to this, which is the name of the page, which is main page .aspx. All right, and that's it. Okay. And then here you will put the URL that you want to go to. I'll tell you why I did this in a minute. All right, so if I run this, I should, if I do log in, it took me to here, label 1. Yeah? You got that? All right. So what we did, all we did is that we created the URL, and then that URL took me to the other page. Now you could do the same thing. If it was a valid, if you have information in the cookie, instead of taking him to the same page, you can check. If you have that information is there, you can just send him to that page directly. So this code basically can happen in here too, but I'm not going to do it. Okay? All right? Redirect. All right, what's the point behind this? Sometimes you want to pass information to the next page. For example, I want to send the username and the password, just the username to the next page. So how do you send the user to the second page? The way you do it, first you put question mark, okay, to separate it, and then you put the field name. So you say name and then equal to a value. Now the value that you want to get from here, you can put right now ABC, Ali, for example. This will be passed to the next page. All right? As part of the URL. Now in the next page, what you need to do, you need to check, do you have this name being passed to you or not? And if you do, you list it in the label. So if you go back to the Solution Explorer, and if you look at that main page, and if you double click on the code, I already done that. So what you do, you check, do I have in the query string a variable called name or a field called name? If yes, we take that value, the query string, we take that value and append it to welcome. All right? So that is how you use query strings too. So you can use query string to get parameters that is being sent to you. All right. So this is happening in that main page. All right. Let me pause this for a minute. Okay. So this is if you want to pass one value. What if you want to pass two values? If you go back to the login page and double click on this, you see this part? Right now it says Ali, but I don't want to say Ali. What should it say? It should say the value from where? The text box, right? Which is, so you do this, plus txt box1 dot text. Okay? All right? What if you want to add another parameter to it? Not only name, maybe the password if you want to, but it's wrong, of course. But what if you want to do the password too? What do? You just say URL plus equal, you append to it. What do you append to it? You append to it another field. But here you need to separate the field. How do you separate it? You put this ampersand in front of it, and then, for example, you say pass equal, and then now you get the value from where? From the txt box, text box 2 dot text. Okay. All right. So now this string has two values, name and the password. Now if you run it, well, we haven't used the password. So if I want to use the password on the second page, I will have to go back to that main page and do what with it here? I have to do the same thing basically here. Say control copy, control V, and then instead of name, what did we call it? Pass, right? Pass, and you can do, let's say if I define here string message equal to blank first of all, then here welcome, Control Z, okay. Instead of that, we say message equal this, and then here we say message equal message plus. Here we say the password, but here we say and your password is it's like this, okay? And here instead of name, we will make that pass. All right? And at the end, I'll put it in the label, LBL or label 1, then dot text equal message. All right? That's it. So now watch what happens. If we do this and I type in, it took us to this page. We don't want this page. We want to be in the main page, right? And the login page. So if we run it from here, and what happens here? If I do log in, welcome Omar, and your password is 123. Okay? So that is how you pass information using the query string. So from the client, you can do it 3 ways. Either cookies, query string, or from where? From the view state. That's how you pass information to your server. All right? And they all come with what? With the request. They all come with the request every time you receive a request. All right, we're done with this lecture. All right, and we'll cover another topic next time. Okay?